Meet the highest casualty producing weapon in the entire US Army's regular infantry arsenal, the M249 belt-fed squad automatic 5.56 machine gun. I say belt-fed, but I kinda lied. It also has this really bizarre ability to feed through a side magazine port too. I'd rather surrender than be forced to fire it that way. Gross. In this video, I want to take a look at the origins of the M249 because it's one of the weapons I carried when I was in Iraq, and I had kind of a really mixed experience with it. We're going to take a look at its evolution as a weapon and its use in various combat situations. Then, finally, we're going to take a look at what the future 249 could look like. If you like getting your defense information from a former average infantryman in their sweatpants, then consider firing around at the like and subscribe button. So where did the need for this weapon originally come from? Well, we can trace its roots all the way back to the year 1965, when the US military was unhappy with the belt-fed machine guns that they were using at the time, the M60 and the M2 Browning. Both of these solutions technically required a crew of 2 in order to properly operate. The military was acting like Goldilocks here. They wanted their belt-fed machine gun that was just right, not too big, not too small. And they were looking for a middle child to add to the family. And the M249 was just the problem child to fit that role. Just like a failing marriage, bringing in another child always solves the problem. The 249 originally started off development as the larger caliber 7.62 by 51mm FN Mini-Me. Mini-Me is French for mini machine gun. It was developed in the mid-1970s by a man named Ernest Verveer. Ernest was born in 1909, and he was a school teacher at a mechanical school before starting work at Fabrique Nationale, where he became the chief designer in 1954. This guy is seriously underappreciated. He invented the M249 and the M240, yet no one knows who he is. Just to show you how significant that is, those are 2 of the 3 primary small arms used by the US infantry squads. When Ernest Verveer created the original M249 prototype, he probably had no idea that we would still be talking about it 50 years later. Or maybe he was a really confident guy and he did know. He did something that I've noticed a lot of great firearms engineers do. They combined and improved upon multiple proven systems from the past. While Ernest was developing the M249, he took inspiration from the old World War II era MG42's Hall-type feeding mechanism. The way the weapon works is the bolt starts in the open position, pulled back to the rear. When the trigger is pulled, the bolt starts to fly forward under the power of the recoil spring, and the feed lever is forced to the right, causing the feed pall assembly to turn in the opposite direction, serving up a round to be fired. A cartridge is then stripped from the belt, chambered, and discharged. This pressure from the gas moves a piston that provides the energy to extract and eject the spent casing and advance the belt, which prepares the gun for subsequent shots. This gives it an extremely high rate of fire that it's known for. Some would later criticize the M249, saying it was too high speed, something no one's ever accused me of. One of the most weird design quirks that has been around since, honestly, I can't say any other machine gun has this, is its ability to fire a regular magazine through a separate side port. So let's say you're in a situation where you're out of belt-fed ammo, you can still use extra magazines that are lying around, and it jams constantly when fed that way. I fired it this way just for fun one time at the range, and I think I gave my squad leader a heart attack. He was so offended by the abomination of a sight seeing a belt fed with a magazine in it. What I had done was unforgivable. I have to go ahead and chalk this design choice up to the fact that everyone designing guns in the 1970s must have been tripping balls. By the early 1970s, the US Army started using the term squad automatic weapon for the very first time in order to differentiate this gun from the role of the other belt-fed crew-served machine guns. The whole purpose of this new light weapon would be that it was light enough for one single, solitary, lonely soldier to be able to use it as an individual weapon without the assistance of a machine gun crew. This would be the SAW's claim to fame, allowing one soldier to do the job of 2 for the pay of 1. During the US Army competition in 1974, the FN Herschel Mini-Me, aka the M249, went up against the M16 H-Bar and the HK-23A1. By 1978, the FN Mini-Me changed its designation to the XM249 for the Americans version, and in 1980 it was selected as the best possible light machine gun out there. It had officially won the competition. Break open the champagne, party at FN Herschel, drinks on them. They've got that sweet, sweet DOD money to spend. Wait, it's 1982. What was the popular way to party back then? The XM249 became known simply as the SAW, which is a very fitting nickname given its ability to chew through a tree. It delivers a sustained high volume of fire at 900 rounds per minute, and 925 meters per second muzzle velocity, this is a perfect weapon for the American infantry's tactics, which rely on fire superiority in combat. The 249 is the ugly duckling of weapons. When it was first adopted, it wasn't exactly loved by troops. It was heavy, liable to burn your hand, and prone to misfires. Only after a series of incremental changes did we finally come to appreciate its true value. But were the changes enough to fix all the problems at the end of the day? I was a lowly private that got stuck with the 249 when I was in Iraq, and I could totally understand the love-hate relationship that most soldiers have with it. It's kind of a rite of passage to get issued the 249 because it teaches you weapons maintenance, and my platoon sergeant figured that I would have a really hard time losing the giant thing. Joke's on him, I lost it right away. FN Herschel set up a factory in America in the state of South Carolina, dedicated to manufacturing and evolving the 249. Even though it had won the squad automatic competition, the challenges with the weapon had really just begun at this point. It had problems with having an exposed barrel which could easily burn soldiers when it got hot. Soldiers were annoyed that they had to use special tools to adjust the sights. Within only 2 years, the Undersecretary of the Army, James R. Ambrose, had gone and completely suspended production of the 249 so that they could improve it. They replaced the original steel tubular stock with a plastic one. This change meant that they could add a hydraulic buffer system in there which would help reduce recoil and increase accuracy. Oh, and they slapped a handguard rail on there so I don't have to burn my paws off when I use the thing. The addition of the 100 and 200 round fabric soft pack magazines, which we always affectionately called nutsacks in my platoon, these replaced the old plastic ammo boxes, which were difficult to click into place and they fell apart easily. And no upgrade would be complete without an addition of the Picatinny rails for scopes, as is tradition. If you've ever tried to shoulder the thing or fire it from the hip, it's incredibly difficult if you're not like me and you're jacked out of your mind. On the other hand, troops did like it for its durability and massive firepower. The original 249 had a gas regulator that you could switch between normal and adverse if it was getting sandy in there and slowing the gun down. In the 1991 Gulf War, the weapon would face its first large-scale combat test. Only about 900 troops used the weapon in the Gulf War because it was relatively new at the time, but they found it to be incredibly effective in combat. The high rate of fire was able to keep the heads of the enemy down and allowed troops to maneuver around the battlefield. But it also gained a reputation as being cumbersome, and carrying the loadout kind of sucked. Originally, soldiers carried 600 rounds, and then later they would change that requirement to a whopping 1,000 rounds. That's 27 pounds of ammo hanging off your kit. I didn't even have space for it on my vest. I had to put some in a backpack. To make matters worse, a report from the US Army NATAC Soldiers Center in 2002 found that over 50% of the soldiers had problems maintaining the weapon, but 80% believed it was accurate and lethal. A 2006 survey of the US military soldiers who used the SAW in combat, 30% had stoppages. So why wouldn't the Army just throw it in the trash at this point? Statistically, out of all of the infantry small arms, the SAW is the highest casualty producing weapon. So the Army continued to work on improving the 249 after those disappointing numbers by tossing on a sweet M145 optic, which gives the gunner a 3.4 times magnified view. Not everyone thought the 249 had problems though. Lieutenant Colonel Al Kelly of the 1st Battalion 17th Infantry said, quote, "Knockdown power is poor, but is compensated by rate of fire." I agree, sir, sometimes the old spray and pray mentality is the best way to go. The M249 would begin its next generation of evolution when soldiers found it didn't really meet their needs in Afghanistan. It was too heavy to march through the mountains with, and it wasn't practical for close quarters combat. The Army created the M249 Para version, which was called that because of its actual intended use by airborne troops. The version had much shorter 13.7-inch barrel and a collapsible stock. Its overall length was down to 35 inches now, and it weighed 16 pounds. So the next step in the evolution of the M249 is their next generation Evoy line, which is a direct evolution of the M249. With this version, I feel like they've finally reached the promised land. They've made a belt-fed machine gun that's light enough to fire from the hip like a rifle. It only took like 50 years, but we finally have it. By using ultra-lightweight polymer materials in the construction of the gun, they were able to bring the total weight down to 12 pounds, which is a full 6 pounds lighter than the original. It has a slightly lower rate of fire at 750 rounds per minute. Even though this new Evoy is not in the running to replace the Army's M249, it will likely be adopted by many of the countries looking for an upgrade. It's not simply a trimmed-down version of the 249 either. Guns.com reported that FN submitted over a dozen new patents between 2017 and 2020 for the new machine gun components and parts. The M249 SAW has given the American warfighter a volume of fire advantage over the enemy. When placed within the US Army's fighting doctrine of only maneuvering under suppressing fire, this is the perfect tool for the job. Future machine guns, including the NGSW, all have a range of about 12 pounds now, so it's only a matter of time before the 249 is finally replaced. The only question is whether or not those fancy new weapons are as durable as the old ones. Thank you for watching. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. I'm your host, Chris Cappy. You're watching Task and Purpose.